Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us for the Creating Engaging and Powerful YAC Projects webinar. Today's webinar is being offered by the Oregon School-Based Health Alliance through a contract with the SBHC State Program Office. And this is the second SBHC Youth Advisory Committee Technical Assistance webinar that we're offering this spring. The first webinar in the series, Intro to Youth Adult Partnerships, is now available to watch on our website. I have a couple quick housekeeping items. Make sure to use the chat feature with chat with us throughout the webinar. If you don't currently see the chat box on your screen, click on the More section and just select chat there right on the top. And feel free to ask questions throughout. We'll have specific times to answer, but if you have a question that springs to mind, go ahead and type it in. And then also make sure that you are muted. And if you are calling into the webinar, just make sure not to put us on hold at any point. So my name is Ashley McAllister, and I'm the program manager at the Oregon School-Based Health Alliance, where I work to ensure that we are representative of the young people that school-based health centers serve. And one of the groups that I work with are our student health advocates. And I'm happy to have a few of them here with me today. So James Biggers and Megan Feely and Melissa Munoz. And I'm hoping to open by asking each of you how long you have been involved with our work here at the Oregon School-Based Health Alliance. And since we're talking about engaging and powerful YAC projects today, what is the most important quality for you in a project?
I suppose I'll start. Can't tell by my voice, I'm James. I've been involved with the Oregon School-Based Health Alliance for about 4.5 years. I started in October of 2013. And as far as important qualities in a project go, at least for me, the most important qualities would have to be me actually having work to do, me feeling like I'm accomplishing something, and feeling a sense of independence as well.
Great, thank you, James.
My name is Melissa, and I've been involved with the student health advocates since last year in September, and an important quality to me. Sorry, but forgetting the question. I would say, I guess the clarity around like what everyone's supposed to be doing, and like the objectives are like clear. So I think just it makes the project go more smoothly from my perspective. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Melissa.
And then my name is Megan. I've been involved with this Oregon School-Based Health Alliance for about 3 years now. I was previously involved in my high school YAC for a year before I graduated. And then I learned about this group when I went to Awareness Day in Salem, and they recruited me, and I am so glad I joined. So a project that, a project goal is the most important thing for me for a good project, for a good YAC project. So whether it's mental health awareness or just an educational goal for the project, I think having a very defined goal and purpose is really important because it gives the youth some sort of thing to motivate themselves for the project, so they will want to involve themselves more in it.
Thank you, Megan. We're also going to be joined today by Alicia Southwick, and Alicia is the Wellness and School Health Supervisor at Umatilla County Health, and she will be talking with us about the work that she does with youth through the Pendleton School-Based Health Center. So we'll have time to talk with her about a great YAC project and ask her some questions as well. So we're going to go over today's objectives. And today we're hoping to identify what makes a YAC project successful, to review key benefits and best practices for youth-adult partnership, to give concrete examples of engaging and powerful YAC projects, and give you all an opportunity to share concrete examples as well, and then provide tools that you can use when implementing YAC projects. And some of the takeaways from our Intro to Youth-Adult Partnership webinar, which if you didn't already get a chance to watch, it was presented by Liz Thorne and Haley Williams, and we definitely recommend that you watch it, as youth-adult partnerships are foundational to the work that you do with YACs. So some of the takeaways were, big picture, that youth-adult partnership occurs along a spectrum. So the goal is for youth to have voice and shared power with adults, and to have active participant roles. And when you are building youth-adult partnerships, it's important to pay attention to logistics and group dynamics, and create ongoing opportunities for collective reflection. So that's formal and informal. And this can mean giving youth an opportunity to fill out feedback forms after a project is concluded, in addition to carving out space from your YAC meeting to reflect and debrief. And it's also important to affirmatively address issues of role and power within our work. So there's a lot of ways that we can work to make YAC projects engaging and powerful. And I'm going to go through some of these, and then ask you three to kind of talk too about ways that you think YAC projects can be made engaging and powerful. So the first thing is to make sure that it's meaningful, and to connect the group to your group's, connect the project to your group's mission, if you do have a mission, or to connect it to larger societal issues or community health issues that youth are passionate about, and to make sure that you get the youth's buy-in and ensure that that is something that they're interested in working on. It's also important to focus on youth-adult partnership. It is just absolutely foundational, and there's a really great quote here from a text called Being Youth-Adult Partner Savvy, and it says, youth-adult partnership cannot be a side project. If organizational leaders do not actively endorse youth-adult partnership, model it, and encourage others to engage in it, then it is unlikely to flourish. So youth-adult partnership is a project in itself, and something that really needs to happen alongside all other work. It's also really important to provide opportunities to be creative and build skills, and to be really clear about roles and expectations and goals and timeline. So creating structured opportunities for the youth that you're working with to think about the roles that they can play in these projects. Youth can help you to create structure within the group. And one thing you can do is give them an opportunity to create agendas and help with facilitating meetings. And it's also important to determine how much time is necessary for staff to invest in the project. So for every hour that you spend meeting with your YAC, some people recommend that you plan to spend at least 2 hours planning for each hour meeting with the YAC. Let's see, do we have any other ideas from Megan or Melissa or James?
Well, I think it's really important when we're talking about youth engagement and youth involvement. So if, say, you're giving a presentation and a big part of your project is a presentation, I think it's really important that the youth lead a good portion of that presentation. And then additionally, even with things that that might seem like not important in the process of creating the project, there was one time where we were in Bend and we were in a hotel room and we were preparing the night before for a training that we were leading. And one of the things that one of our leaders did was like, we're going to be stuffing folders and we're going to put some jams on, like as in music. And we're just going to stuff folders and we're going to do it in a line and be productive. And it was fun because we were just being silly and contributing to this project that we've been planning for so long. And it may seem like something very small and boring, but with the right sort of tunes, it's pretty fun.
Yes, music is essential. Yeah, it's important the project is fun. And I think that's a good reminder that you can make even the most mundane activities fun.
I suppose I want to speak more on the idea of having a project that's meaningful and relevant to your community, and also to have goals in mind that can be measured. So a good goal would be like, okay, we want to see an increase in students using our mental health care facilities. And so what project can we design around that? And then you can look at it before and after and you can see, okay, we've made progress here. Like we did the thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
For me, I want to mention research because I think individual or group research would really also like just benefit overall like a YAC project because it could definitely like back some of the information. It can back it up, and so I think that's important. Yeah, I think that's important.
It is, yeah.
And additionally, from the staff members who are working with the youth, I think it's really important that if, say they're working with a group of youth that are more reserved or a group of youth that just are having a hard time getting motivated into the project, I think it's really important to have a staff member that knows how to gauge that audience and that group and be able to motivate them. And to also kind of lift them up. And if a youth is feeling like, I can't speak in front of this group of people, like I can't do this, I'm not good enough to do this, to also just be able to lift them up and say, no, you are good enough for this. I see all these great traits in you. And I think you will do an amazing job if you do this. And
just to add on to that, I was also like, I was thinking about also having someone who's like, a mentor to these like youth advocates, just someone who isn't like also just treating them like if they mess up or like they probably aren't like being totally out there and like do have ideas but don't want to like talk about them, like just having someone too who isn't like too hard on them and like making them feel like they're not doing enough or they're like I don't like quote unquote like stupid because they're not like talking or they're not like saying anything, making them feel that way, because I've definitely had experience with that, and so it definitely makes you feel like you don't even want to contribute if this person is just making you feel like you like aren't smart enough or something like that, so yeah.
Well, and to go further, they should also be the leader of the group or should also be very understanding of the youth themselves and be compassionate about their skill set and their abilities, because everyone has different skill sets and everyone has different abilities. Mm-hmm. And then to also be understanding that their time that they're investing in this project is voluntary. They're there because they want to be there. And it's pretty amazing that they're there because they probably have a gajillion other things that they're doing, like sports, honors thingy-majiggers, academics. They probably have a brother or sister that they have to like pick up after school, or they might even have a job. And so just to be understanding of the fact that every moment that they spend there, they might be really happy to be there, or they might be like semi-happy to be there, but it's ultimately it's volunteer time. And across the board, even between students, that's sort of something that should always be respected.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So we are going to talk a little bit about the experiential learning cycle. And experiential learning occurs when youth engage in an activity and then have a chance to look back at it critically, to extract useful insight from the analysis, and then to apply the results. And I know, James, you were kind of talking about this being beneficial a minute ago, but this 4-stage learning cycle is really helpful when you are working to ensure that you have a powerful project. And I know that several people on the webinar today are working on youth participatory action research projects, and also called YPAR. And YPAR is a great example of a project that utilizes this learning circle. But this is a really great framework to use for all YAC projects. So we'll go through the steps of this cycle, and the first one is experience. So this represents youth actually participating in the activity and doing the project. And then the next step is reflective observation. So this gives youth an opportunity to communicate their observations and their reactions and their feelings. And in this stage, youth get to reflect on what happens during the project. So the goal is to help the group get a clear and accurate picture of what took place during the experience. And it's also a time to articulate and clarify memories and feelings that may have come up through the experience. And next is conceptualization interpretation. And this gives opportunities for youth to connect the experience to real world examples. So they can ask, so what? The goal is to help the group take all of the information and then synthesize it into meaningful conclusions about the group and the project. And then active experimentation. Youth participate or youth practice or plan to use what they learned in a similar or different situation. So they get to ask what next as a group. And the group considers the lessons learned and discusses its impact on future projects, and they get to consider if they can apply what they've learned in other situations. So this is a really useful tool when thinking through your projects and making sure that you are giving youth an opportunity to participate in each aspect of this learning cycle. And so next we are going to talk with Alicia Southwick. And I'm really happy to have Alicia with us here today. She is the Wellness and School Health Supervisor at Umatilla County Health. And she's going to be talking with us about the work that she does with youth at the Pendleton School-Based Health Center.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Alicia. Thanks so much for joining us. Now, Alicia, you don't actually have a YAC at Pendleton High School, but you work with the School Gay Straight Alliance through the School-Based Health Center. Is that right?
That's correct. We work with them on health-related topics as well. So in some concept, I consider them a YAC, but they identify as the GSA club. They've always been the GSA club, and we're kind of partnering with them.
Yeah. And I think that's really great to know, because there's a lot of this work that can happen even if you don't have a YAC at your school-based health center. And a lot of this work can happen through other clubs or through other opportunities that come up. So Alicia, can you tell us a little bit about the group that you work with and you're currently working on an action grant project through the Oregon School-Based Health Alliance?
Yeah. So we are working with the GSA club to teach the It's All One curriculum, and the officers of the club have reviewed the curriculum, are participating in it, and they are actually the ones who primarily teach it. And then the co-advisors also jump in and help teach the curriculum as needed. But primarily they're the main people who are teaching the curriculum, which works really nice. I heard earlier in the webinar talking about playing on skill sets, and the president of the club wants to be a teacher one day, so she's really enjoyed this opportunity to kind of practice some skills that she's hoping to grow and develop for her future career. And then what the entire club learns through the curriculum and what they take away from it, they then want to share through a school-wide campaign later this spring.
That is so great. What do you think has made this such a successful project?
There's three main things that I think has made it successful for this school year. We've participated in action grants before, but this year what was different was one, we do partner with an existing club, and I think that's what makes it something more sustainable as well. Another success is that this year we are also co-advising the group, so it's not just the school-based health center being the advisor of the club. We also are partnering with the teacher in the school to co-advise. That gives us a couple of benefits. One, we have a consistent classroom that we can always in for their club meetings. And it also provides a safe person for club members, that an additional safe person that club members know and can come to, especially when our school-based health center isn't necessarily open every day and I'm not on site every day. There's another person there that the officers know they can work with as they're working on their project, but then also members know that they can come to, especially as a GSA, they have a safe person where they know it's okay if something comes up. The third thing that makes it really successful is at the start of this project, last year we took a year off from having action grant funding, but we were still active in working with the GSA. And in the spring, when the applications for this year's funding came out, we showed it to the officers and we asked them, is this something that you guys want to do? We don't have to, it's optional. And if you do, which one of the projects would you want to work on? And so we had them decide that they wanted to apply for funding. They decided that they wanted to work on the healthy relationships topic. And it really helped create that buy-in that made our project this year much stronger than we have in previous action grant years. And I think it's also what kind of feeds into the officers wanting to teach the curriculum and leading the projects. And it's been really helpful just to see it grow further because of that.
That's really great. What kind of resources have you been able to provide to the youth for the project?
Mostly I'm there to help them back up what they're teaching in the curriculum. Especially like when they start talking about more health related topics, we try to help give them additional information so that we're sharing, accurate and medically correct information. That's my nurse coming out in me. And then we also help to build partnerships both inside the school and out of the school. I've found that partnerships within the school, officers that are new being officers in a club, there's a lot of school logistics and how a club runs that we're able to kind of help them navigate that. And then once they learn that, then they can keep going. Little things like how to reserve a room, how to use their club funding that's within the school accounts, and different, approval systems that are needed. So we help them kind of navigate that system, but then also bring in partnerships outside. So when they want to do their school-wide campaign, then we have connections to outside partnerships that when they're talking about like, oh, it would be great to have someone from mental health present, we can say, well, here's some options, which one of these agencies are you wanting to reach out to? And we can share contact information with them so that they can do that. And then of course, one of the big resources, since they're not a formal YAC, they're a GSA club, they see us as providing a resource of funding through the action grant process. And they really appreciate that and engage in that. And it kind of helps their club to do more than what it would otherwise do.
Those are great tools. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Alicia, do you mind answering just a few questions about like some of the logistics of the group? Like, how big is the group? How many students do you have? And what's the age spread? Like, are they mostly younger students, mostly older students, kind of all throughout the spectrum?
It's a really great question, and it's changed over the years. I would say currently we have a broader spread of age group, 9th through 12th grade students. When I first started engaging with the GSA group, it was primarily seniors, which was causing a turnover problem because we would work with them for a year and then they would leave and then we were starting over, and then like they'd maybe pass it down to the next senior class that was upcoming. And a couple years ago, we shifted that dynamic with them and we worked on getting younger officers into the group, which has helped, one, to create some sustainability, which has helped with the logistics, and then two, it's also encouraged all different grades to come to the group as well. Did I answer all the parts of your question?
Yeah, just about how many students are in your group?
Oh, okay. Yeah, it changes. I've seen anywhere from up to like 30 kids, and slower months it might be 10 kids. It just kind of depends on the month and what's happening, because teens are busy. They have other things to do.
Hey, if you can get even 10 on the slowest months, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So when do you know when to give the reins over to the youth? Like, when do you know when to relinquish control of the project and kind of let them start to lead it? And when do you know that they're ready for that? What are the sort of signs that they are ready?
What's really interesting is that I've worked with this group for almost 4 school years now, and I found myself asking those questions earlier on of like, oh, we've got this work that we need to do. How can we motivate them? And there was, when do I give them control? When do I need to take the lead? And what's funny is this year, I think they're asking more of that question. They're in control, and they decide for themselves when they need to involve me and what I need to do to support them. And so it's kind of tough for me to answer that question right now, because the dynamics have completely shifted, and the club is leading itself and the officers are taking control. And for right now, because we have built this partnership over 4 years and they're in that place where they can be successful with that, I'm comfortable leaving it just where that is. If things change and they are struggling to get motivated or struggling to find resources that they need, I would happily step in. But a lot of times it's them deciding when I need to be involved.
Seems a lot like a natural evolution. Once you get the group sustained and year after year they're able to keep themselves going, eventually they kind of break away and start doing everything independently.
Absolutely, absolutely. And a part of that was getting a broad spread of officers from different age groups or classes, so that you wouldn't lose them as seniors and you wouldn't have to start over every year, and making sure that there was that age spread so that there was always training of the next group of officers happening.
Well, I think it's interesting that you even have officers, because I've never, up until recently, I haven't been a part of an organization that had officers. And the organization that I am a part of that does have officers is because they're part of a national organization where one of their requirements is you have to have this type of officer and this type of officer, and these are the rules of the club and stuff. So it's actually really amazing that you have officers in the first place.
I think it helps give them some leadership opportunities. I know that a lot of them are looking to be able to put that on college applications, and we don't have any strict rules on what types of officers to have. A lot of times they determine that, and sometimes there's people looking for leadership opportunities, and so they'll create a position that someone can have so that they can be a part of that. It helps to give the club someone who's leading it, and also them a leadership opportunity.
Yeah, that's great.
Alicia, I'm wondering about what recruitment has looked like for you at Pendleton.
It's gone well. I mean, I don't know. Recruitment isn't really what I've done. It's a club that's been in existence at the high school beyond when I started working with them. And typically the officers take care of advertising the meetings and bringing people in. From a school-based perspective, we promote the group within our office and are encouraging, students that we think would benefit from it to go as well. So I don't know if recruitment's the word I would use. It's kind of operates as a club, and the students are bringing their peers in and people who they know need a place to be.
Yeah, well, you're clearly doing a really good job, because that's a lot of high number. And it's good to hear that youth are involved in in helping to bring friends in, because I think that's what attracts people to different groups and clubs is just like relationship.
Food motivates. That always helps. And we bring food. And we do a few outreach events throughout the year where that GSA is known for. They do a day of silence, usually in May. There's a couple other events that they do that everyone in the school kind of knows that, oh yeah, that's what GSA does. And so they kind of help advertise themselves through that, and people become familiar with its existence.
Can I ask a new question?
Yeah.
Okay, I want to ask about that one too. So I was wondering, how much interaction do you have with the youth at Pendleton?
Sure. I interact with them on a weekly basis, and at least connect with their main officer for logistics. But especially since we've switched over to a co-advising model, I don't spend as much time with them one-on-one as I have in previous years. I think it's really helpful to have a teacher as a co-advisor, and it's kind of helped to make it more sustainable as well, because then it's not too much burden on the teacher and it's not too much burden on me as far as time. And then the youth kind of knows who to come to who for what types of things they need worked on.
Would you say in the Gay Straight Alliance at your school-based health center that there's like a lot of diversity? Like, is there a lot of youth of color involved?
I would say it's as diverse as Pendleton can get. Pendleton itself may not be very diverse, but I think you see some of the diversity in the club that would be reflective of Pendleton.
Okay. How many students do you know that are youth of color that are involved right now? Like, can you give me a number?
It would probably be about 20, like maybe 15 to 25% of people coming to the group. And that would primarily be from the, actually no, I was gonna say it was gonna primarily be from our kids that are Native American, but that's not true. We have others as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, does anyone else that's here on the webinar have any questions for Alicia? If you do, you can type them into your chat box. Are there any more questions from us?
Do you think that the Gay Straight Alliance at Pendleton has helped to create a safer environment for the students in the club that consider themselves LGBTQ?
Absolutely. In previous years working with GSA, the officers have worked on getting safe space signs up in different classrooms and to kind of identify teachers that are safe to go to and to talk with. It's also part of why we kind of set up co-advising, so that there's one lead teacher that students know that they can come to. Also, this year, teaching the It's All One curriculum and has helped to open up those conversations. And I think more students are wanting to come because they know that we're talking about health and healthy relationships, and not just what that means for gay or straight students.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Alicia, we have a question from Jackie Litzout about the It's All One curriculum. How did school administration respond to the It's All One curriculum? There has been fear with my administration about implementing because of the topic areas of the curriculum.
That's a really good question. That was definitely what we spent the first few months working on. I would say it really helped that the youth decided on doing the healthy relationships topic for the action grant, and they also which then they knew it came with teaching about curriculum. So that also provided an additional voice talking with administration. It wasn't just me. And the youth actually were the first people to approach the principal at the school about teaching the curriculum. And they shared with him they printed off the curriculum for him and handed it to him. And of course, then I got a phone call from the principal, which was, it was kind of designed that way. We wanted the youth to make the first approach, and I knew the principal had my phone number and would call me afterwards. And so then we had a good conversation. And what I did to help our administration was that the It's All One curriculum is a massive book, and I think it just looks intimidating when you print off the entire document. So I went through and I turned it into a 2-page document that overviewed what depth we were going to go through on each topic and what our main discussion points were going to be. The plan for our group this year is to do an overview of each topic and just introduce each one during each club meeting. And then next year we'll go more in depth on each topic. And so providing kind of like the 2-page document that gave them the brief overview helped to really condense what we were talking about and give the principal a better idea of like, okay, this is what we're talking about, rather than looking at a massive document, which they just don't have time to review. And I think that's what made them nervous, like, oh, I don't know what's in here and I don't have time to read the entire thing. So that helped. And then also when we partnered with a teacher in the school building and were co-advising, our principal was comfortable with knowing that a teacher who he hired and knows what the policies and procedures are for their school and rules are for their school was going to be present when all of the curriculum was being taught, along with a nurse was going to be present in the event that, you know, when we started talking about more health related topics. And so his approval was based off of kind of our overview document, and that myself and the teacher would always be present as the students were sharing, so that we would help moderate discussions.
Great, thank you so much, Alicia. Those are really helpful tips for any project where you need to get approval from an administrator who has minimal time, and I'm glad that that has worked so well for you at Pendleton. So thanks so much for taking the time to talk with us today.
Thank you.
So we want to open it up to all of you watching to share some of your successful project ideas with us. So go ahead, and if you want to share in the chat box now, please do. And while you're doing that, I want to ask Megan and Melissa and James, what are some engaging and powerful YAC projects that you have all been involved with?
Well, in my years, I've been involved with quite a few. One that just came to mind a few minutes ago was a YPAR that I was involved with about 3 years ago. And it involved assessing the effectiveness and the need for mental health care in schools around the Portland public area. And I had the opportunity to go around with another former member and interview a lot of the mental health care providers in school-based health centers to see, you know, what their workload looked like, how many students they were able to see, how many students they weren't able to see, what the need looked like in the schools. And for one thing, it was incredibly eye-opening to see how overworked these providers were, and that the need was still growing all the time. But it also felt really rewarding to be able to compile all the information. We surveyed students at the schools as well to compile all of that information and to build this argument for, you know, why we need more funding for mental health care. And so I found that to be very rewarding. There was, you know, a set goal there. I got to go out and I got to, you know, be in the field, so to speak. And so I felt that that was very engaging, very powerful. There's also our Eye to Eye project, and maybe I'll pass it off to Meg because I'm talking.
Yeah, so the Eye to Eye project is the only project that I've really been a part of since I started at the Oregon School-Based Health Alliance. And it's essentially a training, and the SHA now will go to different areas in Oregon, potentially out of the state, but that requires a lot of money. And we've gone to Bend, Corvallis, and several other areas. And we basically give a talk, which is really awesome, and not to like toot our own horn. And we basically try to let the healthcare professionals know how to build rapport with youth and how to be more comfortable with the youth provider for both sides on having really tricky conversations, like about sex and race and other things that are really important to the youth experience when going into a yearly checkup. And I think the most rewarding part of that is at the end, you really do understand from the reactions from the providers and the things they ask us and their own commentary that our training is really important and that it's actually really beneficial for providers to hear us talk about these things. And I think my favorite part about the whole thing is we do this like little mock doctor's visit, and it's always our goal to come up with a scenario that just like not scares them, but surprises them and catches them off guard. Because it's always going to be those visits in the doctor's office that could potentially go wrong, where the provider is caught off guard, where the provider is surprised, or they don't know something. And it's always really important as a provider or as a leader in any scenario to ask questions if you don't know what something is, because you could be creating a bad situation if you don't get past your pride and just ask, what is this thing that you talked about?
I have a funny little anecdote about that eye project. I had the opportunity to give the presentation in Austin, Texas, a couple of years back at our national conference. And we had providers from all over the country there. And there were these two ladies from South Carolina who were there. And the whole time they were so taken aback by all the things we were saying. They're, oh my gosh, I can't believe you talk about this. And they were, and I mean, they weren't being, mean by any sense, but they were, they were kind of like, oh, this is, crazy information. But at the end of the presentation, when we're, wrapping up and we're saying bye to everyone, and they were the two that seemed the most moved. They were the ones who, approached us and were like, hey, that was really awesome. Like, you really helped, open my eyes a little bit about, youth adult conversations. And that made me feel really great that, I, made that little bit of a difference in the world somewhere.
Yeah, another anecdote was there's been several. So for my character that I play, I always choose the youth who's in an open relationship, who's sexually active, but who's the twist? She uses like protection. And the providers always go for like, oh, they're not using protection, or, oh, they're sad they're in an open relationship, but it's always something else that's actually the problem. And so providers are always surprised, like, oh, there's a youth that uses protection, or, oh, there's a youth that is actually happy with their relationship, even if it's not the stereotypical relationship that we all know and make movies about. And so I think it's always funny just to see their faces, because it's always great to know that we're in some way educating the providers, even if it's just like, this is what this word means.
So an engaging, powerful project that I've been involved in, recently we went to Salem for Advocacy Day, and that was really inspiring and fun for me. I enjoyed that day. I like that we were able to talk with a legislator, and they were just a fantastic human being, and so that was like a nice interaction for that day. And yeah, I would say that's one I definitely enjoyed, and you know, if I get the opportunity again to do it, I probably would. So yeah, that's fun for me.
That's good to hear. Are there YAC projects that any of you would like to see take place around the state?
So there was a high school, which I forgot the name of, and the person who knows the name of the high school is in Harvard right now, so they're kind of busy. But their high school and their YAC led TED Talks. And the main reason why they started the whole TED Talk movement in their high school was because they recently had, it was like a few years ago, but they recently had a series of students who committed suicide. And it was really tragic for the entire school because it was basically one after another. And so they realized that there was a huge issue that they needed to address in a productive and healthy way. And so they just gave TED Talks about mental health, how to deal with it, ways to cope with stress. And all of these TED Talks were led by students, and they were taught, like the person on the stage was a student at that school. And I think that's really powerful because other students probably recognized that student and was like, oh, that's my friend Billy, he's so awesome. And I think it's also really important to recognize problems within your own school. So like what we were talking about earlier, doing surveys and finding out what do students think are the biggest problems in their school, and then finding a way to resolve that in a way that is engaging and that kind of fits the trend, because I know TED Talks are a trend right now, or at least they have been for the last 2 years. So I think that's a really awesome thing.
It's a great idea.
I just wanted to mention that I think mental health is really important. So I really appreciate when there's like projects or things like Advocacy Day where people can go and talk about like resources for mental health and how that also impacts like our communities, especially communities of color, because I think sometimes they can be like majorly under, like just people don't have the resources. And so I think it's important to also remember those communities and like their like accessibility. And so, yeah, I think to me, mental health should be a priority, and as long as possible.
Also, I think projects that I think projects are really powerful, even if they don't have to do with problems that you see in the school themselves. So even if they're problems that you see within a greater community or even other states. So like the Me Too movement, that's a great movement, and that's a great thing to talk about because that is an issue that students might face where they come forward about some sort of abuse that has happened to them and they may not be believed. And I think it's really important to talk about these really important issues because at some point they will come across a moment, whether it's when they leave high school or whether it's during high school. And I think any form of resources that we can provide to youth on dealing with that sort of trauma or that sort of pain or that sort of situation is really vital, and also just makes the person more well-rounded and gives them more tools in their tool belt that they can use later.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple other projects that we thought of, and we know a lot of YACs have done around the state. One is to redecorate your school-based health center. And so that can be, you know, working with your YAC to ensure that your SBHC is inviting and comfortable for youth. And Megan had the idea to create artwork or something along those lines.
Yeah, to create artwork for the school-based health center. And I think it would also be a really cool idea to make it a competition. So just go to art classes and say, hey, we need to redecorate our school-based health center. If any of you want to submit your art or a picture of your art for the competition, we will announce the winners, and the winners will maybe get a cool prize if you have the funding for it. Besides the awesomeness of having your art displayed and like forever remembered and a place of awesomeness.
Yeah. Well, and it also helps to get the word out about the school-based health center. So I think that's a great project. And I've also heard of YACs working on murals as well to help decorate and make their SBHCs more youth-friendly. Another idea is to create a video and then to promote it together. In Central High School, they recently created a suicide prevention video, and there was a noticeable uptick in students accessing mental health after it aired. So you could create a video like that with like an awareness theme, or you could also create a video promoting your school-based health center. And generally just creating awareness campaigns, whether it's a day or a week or a month-long campaign. Your awareness campaign can focus on healthy relationships or mental health or many other topics. And I know right now, one of the students on our statewide Youth Action Council was just telling me yesterday about Forest Grove is having a week-long stress week right before finals, which I think is a great idea and helps to, get people thinking about mental health during a time that is very stressful for a lot of students.
Portland State also does something very similar. They will designate areas that are just for quiet meditation, and then they will bring dogs and like someone brought a llama on campus yesterday and made it an event, like pet this llama and eat some pizza. And they do that every term, near finals, and I think also near midterms, and it's just a great way to de-stress because everyone likes llamas and dogs.
Yeah, of course. I think it sounds pretty good for community building too, because everyone's in the same boat. Everyone's there being stressed about their tests coming up, and so it does a lot to not only aid in the health of the students overall, but to aid in the community as well and to bring the students together.
Absolutely.
We're not having finals at all.
That'd be nice.
Yeah, finals are a very stressful time. So one of the other ideas listed, which Megan talked about, is to host a TED Talk style event. And then also, again, to conduct a school-wide survey to determine health concerns and then to identify a health need to address as a group. There's a lot of tools that you can use in implementing your project. And one of the things that we recommend using are SMART goals. So it's important to be realistic about what you can do as a group. So I'm sure you've all heard of SMART goals, but just a reminder that the S stands for simple, sensible, and significant. It's important to be specific. The M stands for measurable, being meaningful and motivating. The A stands for achievable. The R stands for relevant, reasonable, realistic, resourced, results-based, also work. And the T stands for time-bound. So being time-based and time-limited and timely. There's also a lot of meeting planning tools that you can use to make your planning for your projects more effective. And we will send you a couple of those tools in a follow-up email on the webinar. And I would just also recommend creating opportunities for feedback. So presenting both formal and informal ways for youth to provide feedback on what went well with the project, what didn't go well, and what opportunities or suggestions they have for future projects. And you can do that again through a feedback form, or you can do that through a debrief with the whole group. And ideally you do it in both ways, because different students thrive using different methods of providing feedback. So we only have a couple minutes left, but we just wanted to see if there's any questions from any of you on creating engaging and meaningful projects. Are there any other final thoughts from the three of you? A project that you just like forgot to mention?
Oh wait, there's a long one.
Oh, there's one, great. Thanks, Chloe. So due to the sensitive and controversial subject matter in the It's All One curriculum, sent home to parents before implemented for either permission or at least to inform so that they are aware and able to talk with their children. For an example, say religious curriculum might be presented in a school as a good news club, and that at a school needing parental permission. Might there be any other subjects that would need extra caution if proposing in a YAC club?
Sex. Yeah,
so I mean, a lot of healthy relationship curriculums are going to talk about sex, and the It's All One, the It's All One curriculum is controversial, I think, for that way as well. And I think it's really important to point back to the requirements by the state to ensure that students have access to sex ed, and these curriculums can really help in making sure that the schools are providing that state mandated education. Are there other subjects that you three can think of
that are controversial?
Yeah, a lot of subjects can get controversial.
About what?
Well, I think any reproductive sort of lesson plan or anything that's relating like to the sex, to the body, is controversial. I know every state has, like you were saying, like every state has different laws regarding those sort of subjects on how it should be taught and if parents can opt out of it. So I don't specifically know if you're doing a lesson plan that talks about healthy relationships and in that is healthy relationships and sex, if that is something that can be opted out of, or how you would need to go about that. I feel like what Pendleton did was actually very smart by talking with the principal about the proposal and then asking them, do we need to talk to the parents? Do we need to send out a newsletter? How do we go about this?
Yeah, and making sure that you have champions within the school and the administration is really important.
Yeah, research is always great.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Well, that's all the time we have, unfortunately, for today. I want to thank all of our panelists, James and Megan and Melissa, for being here. Thank you so much. And thank you to Alicia for talking about the project that you have been working on at Pendleton. This last slide just has all of our contact information, so feel free to send us an email if you have any follow-up questions, and we will follow up with some resources for you and the recording of this webinar as well. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Thank you.
Bye.